Well, hi there, Fiends. I'm Leigh, and welcome to Grimmleighs Fiends. Each and every week, we talk about the monsters, myths, and magic that make our culture so very, very cool. This week, I'm proud to present The Act, another original tale from the world of Grimmleighs Fiends. Enjoy. Barnaby Schmutz was a man on a mission. He had been working for the Atomo-Sucks vacuum cleaner company for the better part of a year now, beating the dusty farm roads of rural America and selling the promise of clean carpets to lonely ranch wives and cattle-barren widows. He was pretty sure it was his winning smile and the way his eyes caught the light just right, but he could talk even the shrewdest penny miser into at least letting him demonstrate the Atomo-Sucks, and heck, even if they didn't buy, he might score a slice of homemade pie and a glass of fresh, ice-cold milk. Life was looking pretty swell for Barnaby Schmutz, and he just knew he was about to hit it big, maybe score a sweet bonus from the boss, and possibly have enough jingle in his pockets to finally ask Doris in accounting out for a malted. A handmade sign caught his eye on the side of the road. He slowed down and mouthed out the words. "No trespassing," he muttered to himself, chuckling slightly at the lazy scrawl of the dirt-pounding rube that had made the sign. He put his foot down on the gas, eager to get to the next farm and possibly move into the lead for sales in this region. The next sign was bigger, the paint seeming just a bit more desperate, if that was even possible. The word "Serios" had been plastered onto the sign, pounding home the gravity of the warning. Barnaby Schmutz was many things, but a coward was not one of them. He set his foot firmly on the accelerator and passed several more foreboding signs before coasting over a hill and setting his sights on his quarry. There, in the waning light of the late afternoon, sat an idyllic farmhouse. It was a lovely home with classical shuttered windows, hand-painted accents, and a porch where a fella could while away the evening hours without a care. Barnaby could practically taste the pie he knew would be waiting for him there. Maybe the farmer, or better yet, the farmer's wife, would let him sit a spell on that porch and take in the stars. He was pulled abruptly from his reverie when both of the front tires of his Buick blew out. He swore quietly to himself and settled the big car into a slow, jerky stop. After taking a few deep, calming breaths, Barnaby pulled his suddenly stiff fingers awkwardly from the steering wheel. He opened the door and inspected the damage. Both front tires were shredded, with what looked to be the biggest goat head stickers he had ever seen in his life sticking out of the ruined rubber. Barnaby stretched, a long, drawn-out affair with both hands at the small of his back. This was unfortunate, but there's still a potential customer, and if he hurried, he might make it to the farmhouse before the sun had set completely. He grabbed his Atomo-Sucks sales kit and demo unit from the trunk of the hobbled Buick and set off down the lonely, dusty farm road. A few more signs greeted him as he walked, the same semi-literate scrawl warning him to turn back, each more expressive with its warning than the last. In the fading twilight, the signs began to feel more and more ominous. Barnaby Schmutz was many things, but superstitious wasn't one of them. He laughed a bit about his fluttery nerves and kept on walking until he finally came to the massive farmhouse gate. The gate was barred, but he lifted that bar and stepped onto the property. The land itself had been well maintained, and there was just enough light for him to make out a few nicely kept shrubs dotting the lane to the house, with a massive, twisted tree taking up guard halfway between the gate and the house. As Barnaby got closer to the house, the tree demanded more and more of his attention. There was a classic old-fashioned rope swing hanging from one of the lower branches, and there looked to be a strange doll limply sitting there, swaying gently in the early evening breeze. The tree itself was even stranger, with a jagged rent across its middle that looked an awful lot like a peculiar mouth. Knolls, crags, and depressions across the bark played tricks with the fading light, making the tree look like it had a face. A not very friendly face. Barnaby called out to the tree when he was close, voice shaking with failing nerves. "Hey there, fella. I sure hope you're a friendly tree." He laughed a little at himself and the ridiculousness of the situation. Then he froze in his steps. There was a high-pitched sound, something that sounded an awful lot like someone laughing sarcastically along with him. The strange doll suddenly looked up, no longer slouching lazily on the swing. A groaning, creaking sound followed, like wood straining under its own weight.
"Hey,"
said the high-pitched voice, now obviously coming from the doll.
"what's the best thing to put in a pie?"
Barnaby Schmutz was frozen in place. He wasn't sure if he was supposed to answer, or if he'd become the victim of some kind of horrid farm prank. Regardless, his feet wouldn't move, his hands had gone clammy, and he was certain that he was about to cry. Then, to his horror, the tree answered. with a voice made of gravel, malice, and centuries of spite.
I don't know, pal.
Rumbled the tree.
What's the best thing to put into a pie?
Your teeth!
Shrieked the doll, slapping its knee and laughing hysterically. The tree laughed along, its branches swaying mirthlessly. Even Barnaby chuckled a bit, then screamed as a root erupted from the ground, bound him from head to toe, then jerked him clumsily to the waiting, gaping maw of the tree. The strange little doll laughed even harder when the tree bit down. Barnaby Schmutz was many things, but alive wasn't one of them. Much later that night, old Rufus Oakridge sat on his favorite rocking chair, which he had brought out onto the expansive porch that he and his pa had built back when that blasted tree had only been a sapling and only snacked on the occasional wandering preacher. Those had been better days, before that doll showed up, before the jokes, before the act. He finished off the last of the slice of pie his wife had saved for him, savoring the heavenly tang of blueberries with just a hint of lemon, giving the pie a perfect finish. He took a long sip of fresh, ice-cold milk and looked across the patio where his brightest boy, Whit, was furiously fussing with yet another sign. It didn't matter how many of those blasted signs they put up, those city slickers kept on coming, kept on getting drawn into the act. He smiled and thought about his wife, bustling around inside the house, humming contentedly while trying out the vacuum cleaner that city feller had dropped. Whit looked up keenly, clearly struggling with something.
Well, what is it, boy? How do you spell carnivorous, Pa?
Rufus sat back in his chair, scratched his chin, thought a spell, then answered. He had always had a knack for spelling. K-A-R-N-O-U. Off in the distance, they could hear the tree wetly coughing up the bones of Barnaby Schmutz. Well, I hope you enjoyed that morbid little ditty. And if you did, that's the kind of thing we like to do here on Grimmleighs Fiends. Once a month, we will be producing a unique story that comes from, well, this thing up here, and it will be accompanied by a time-lapse video of the illustration that will be going along with that. If you like what we're doing here, please scare up that like button. You can also let us haunt you forever by subscribing to the channel. We also have a Gumroad store with some original prints and stickers that we've produced from Grimmleigh's artwork that has graced this channel before. You can check that out in the descriptions below. And I'd love to hear what you think of this story or anything that has to do with Grimmleigh's content. Let's start a conversation. Comments are right there for you. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. The best is yet to come.